Cineboys to Cinnamon, episode 54.
54.
Didn't need any time to remember what.
No, we didn't this time. Very much kind of remembered off the bat of the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I hope you're well wherever you are, whatever you're doing. This week, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga.
Indeed, yes. I loved this one. I thought it was really good.
Yeah,
off the bat.
I'm big fan of this one. Really looking forward to talking about it. Alongside that, we'll have a little chat about the career of George Miller.
Yeah.
The other Mad Max films. You spent most of this week watching them, or rewatching them. Sorry.
Yep. Week off work. No, I'm joking. Interesting films. Looking forward to talking about those because one of a kind. Each one is one of a kind, and the franchise, if you could call it that, is one of a kind as well. But has influenced a lot. So good stuff.
Completely agree. I have seen them all. My memory's pretty hazy of them, but I'm hoping you'll grab hold of me and guide me through.
Oh, I shall.
Alongside that, we're going to talk about desert films.
Yeah.
Films set in deserts.
Yes, definitely.
Not clutching at straws for topics.
No, we're not. No. We took this one out of the drawer of topics, of which there are numerous still to come.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got all that to look forward to, and of course, a discussion around the film itself. So lots to get into.
Yep.
Let's do it.
Questing the cinematic void.
So before you chain me to the weather-beaten chassis of a desert buggy, and guide me through the Mad Max franchise,
yes,
let's talk about the setting of the franchise first and foremost.
Yes,
the desert.
A
very
wasteland.
Common backdrop setting or narrative device in many films.
Yeah.
I guess I sort of attribute that to the fact that it is just inherently cinematic. Yeah,
I'm thinking Lawrence of Arabia.
Right, the opening shot, right? I mean, arguably my favourite desert film.
Yeah.
If I had to hastily assemble a list of my favourite desert films. But, just iconic. I mean, that opening sequence of him coming over the dune, that sort of still shot, feels like it goes on forever.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, that whole film is sort of a lengthy one. It's not to say that it isn't amazing, but part of the parcel with that kind of epic, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. But there's also an element to it, I guess, that is otherworldly. Hence, its appeal for sci-fi films.
Yes, agreed.
Star Wars, Dune, of course.
Yeah, Dune.
Spoke about very recently. It's interesting that out of all of the settings, I would say it's probably served broad range of genres, perhaps more than any other.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if there's any way to quantify that.
I don't think there is, but I agree with you that it's a kind of blank canvas for which characters to inject their feelings, whether that be loneliness quite often with the barren landscape, or it could be the opposite. It could be them finding on a quest, right? Finding either themselves or like raw materials. I'm thinking like There Will Be Blood, that's something like that.
Okay,
it can actually be a symbol of prosperity as well.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Or I guess in the context of like There Will Be Blood, like a sort of human ownership on something that is previously not worth the time of day. Yeah, I guess in that case it's sort of like a symbol of humanity's sort of ability to conquer landscapes. Yeah,
against all odds. Like dry, arid, you can't grow anything on there unless it's gorse.
Yeah.
In I guess in the Dune franchise, it's meant to echo kind of colonialism and the idea that we think we can conquer a landscape, whereas actually other kind of sects of people, I suppose, have done so naturally over a course of a very long time. And so it's just a symbol for so many things, and it's so kind of easy to frame. There's a horizon line which is there for you. It's like a kind of almost a spirit level for the camera operator, really. Going back to Lawrence of Arabia, and it's the kind of cinema scope setting, right? When I'm thinking like when those films were coming out in the sort of, I think it was the 50s, like widescreen. David Lean uses that all the time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it is sort of indicative of that period of cinema.
It's
sort of changed. As sort of talked about sci-fi. As sci-fi became the dominant genre, it became the favourite place to sort of shoot otherworldly locations in. Yeah, really interesting. I mean, on the subject of Lawrence of Arabia, I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think it covers quite a lot of the themes we were just talking about. The adverse nature of the landscape, the colonial element.
Yeah, of course.
The backdrop of the First World War. The fact that the British basically told the Arab leaders that if they fought against the Ottoman Turks, they'd give them their land back. Which they never did. But there's that sort of playing in the background, I think.
Yes.
And when you talk about that idea of the old school epic, it doesn't get any more epic than Lawrence of Arabia, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's the benchmark, really.
It's Lean's masterpiece, I think.
Yeah, it's been a really long time since I've seen it. It's sort of aged very well, I think, and the themes kind of adapt to a changing political landscape as well, and how your feelings towards the main characters. Is it T.H. Lawrence or D.T.S.? No, that's T.S. Eliot. I can't remember, but yeah.
T.E. Lawrence.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, got it right the first time.
Yeah,
yeah. I can't remember when I first watched it. I think I was forced into watching it,
It's a film that, like, as you say, it's in the spirit of the classic epic. It isn't. It's a long one.
Yeah, like so Ben-Hur or something.
Yeah, so, like, you do have to clear your schedule to watch it. It's one of those sort of experiences. The first time I saw it was at my great-nana's house on her tiny TV.
Really?
Yeah, and then I watched it again. I made the mistake of watching it when I was unwell.
So
I always associate it with being unwell, which is really annoying. But it's testament to the quality of the film that I can sort of see through it.
Yeah,
I will rewatch it again because it's just absolutely essential viewing. I think just on the basis of, as we said, the aforementioned scope of the film, the ambition, the crew, and everyone associated with the film almost lived among it. There's something really sort of earthy about it, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting that you first watched it on a tiny television as well. So, obviously, you say, the scope. And quite often films these days are advertised on that basis. But it's funny that your memory of it is coming from watching it on a kind of tiny television, which presumably was either pan or scanned, or there was black bars on most of it. I
remember so long ago.
It's been like sort of 20 pixels each way. And yet you still kind of remember it fondly.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? As a sort of an aside, the idea of blockbuster scope and how important it is to have your first experience of a particular film made in that spirit on the cinema screen. How much your opinion of it can really vary depending on the way in which you watch it. I know, more broadly speaking, it's always better to watch a film in a cinema or on a bigger screen.
Yeah, I think.
But I mean, there are some films that it doesn't matter too much. And I mean, obviously, for ourselves, we're watching a lot of old movies. The chances of them appearing on the big screen are pretty low. I find myself thinking that every time I watch, I was watching a couple of Douglas Sirk films the other day, and they're technical, stunning films, and I think, it's such a shame that I can't watch these on the big screen. But you're right that it's interesting in the case of Lawrence of Arabia. There's like a comforting feeling to it, and I even remember thinking, watching it then, this is just epic and it just looks amazing, and it was just on this old shitty TV. So
it sort of transcends the need to be on the big screen in a way. Whereas, imagine watching Dune on that television. Forget it. You're not going to have that same enveloping experience. So there's definitely a timeless quality to it in that respect.
I agree. Yeah. Have you got a desert movie?
Well, you mentioned The Proposition, which actually I started thinking about just now. Since which is an Australian one, which kind of ties into Mad Max a little bit. That is just an example of a really good, in inverted commas, Western, just done, genre done really, really well and sparingly. It's no fat. There's no fat on that film. It's Guy Pearce, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Ray Winston.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Just briefly thought I'd mention that because it doesn't get a lot of love. It's kind of it flew under my radar until university when I think Alfie recommended it to me.
Okay,
or maybe it was you. I don't know if you're a fan of it. John Hillcoat.
Someone at uni recommended it to me, and I can't remember either. So there's this mysterious guy recommending The Proposition to us.
Yeah.
It's a great film, and it's almost like it is a Western, but it's the location is obviously different being in Australia and
Yeah,
the wild
yeah.
west of America, but there are definite parallels in this sort of, again, we spoken about this in the context of the desert film more broadly, but it's the sort of perfect setting for that sort of colonial, a film that explores colonial history. And
Yeah.
I think the reason why the sort of tropes and stylings apply so well in a country like Australia, or transition, from America to Australia, is because of the sort of similar or shared history that those countries have.
Yeah, the Commonwealth and all that kind of
and like
stuff.
indigenous people being pushed sort of away or destroyed or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny. The parallels with America are quite interesting. Actually, what happened with America and the Native Americans, and obviously the indigenous people of Australia. It's almost the same story. So why can't they have a Western? You know, with those themes in mind? I think that's great.
And it's a lot darker and more brutal, isn't it? The proposition. It's quite.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think really Australia had that period that Hollywood did in the sort of classical age, where they were like very, sort of flag wavy.
Yeah, no, they didn't.
Sort of films that gleaned over the horror, the reality of living in the West, I should say.
Yeah,
whereas the proposition feels like just an immediate sort of shot in the arm kind of experience, which I think is kind of in line with Australian cinema more broadly. I think when they are making films that sort of interrogate their colonial past, that they seem very. I mean this as a compliment.
Yeah.
They're unafraid to explore that in a way that it's taken American cinema so fucking long to do.
Yeah. They're very critical of the royal family in Australia, apparently.
Right. Okay.
For that reason, because it was, I think we still have our sort of queen and I guess king on their banknotes. I think.
Okay.
Well, that might be Canada. I can't remember. I'm fairly sure that that's still a thing in Australia.
Yeah, I seem
weird.
to think that's true as well, even though I've never seen an Australian banknote.
Yeah. Any Australians listening, let us know.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. Send us a picture of your of a note and also your bank card as well. With
Yeah.
the pin.
Yeah. That's the only way we're going to afford that hot tub episode.
Yeah.
An Australian benefactor.
Yeah.
Like Great Expectations.
Have you seen Wolf Creek? Actually, it's quite good.
Is that the horror film?
Yeah.
I haven't,
It's good. Again, it's set in the outback, sort of primarily desert location.
Sort of like a sort of a Wes Craven-y, Toe Poopery sort of thing.
Yeah, big time. Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
okay.
Very simple story.
Quite grim.
Very horror. Oh, awful. Yeah. Arguably, a lot of people would call it torture porn, or at least it exists in that realm. I think it's a lot better than that. I think it does just an excellent example of using a sparse setting to amp up tension.
Yeah.
It's just these three travellers who are, you probably guess what happens. Someone abducts them, but it's just it just makes, especially in the first half, it makes good use of Australia's barren landscape, and it really does hammer home that sort of sense of isolation,
and the impact that has on the sort of psyche of its inhabitants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's a classic sort of like 60s, 70s horror device, isn't it?
And it also circumvents a lot of sort of, I think a lot of American equivalents have a lot of dialogue problems whereby it's just the exposition is a bit too heavy, whereas this film kind of uses the setting to explain it, like, because you don't need someone saying, "Oh my god, who's that driving towards us?" Like, you just see headlights and you immediately know what's going to happen, and it's kind of all inferred, and I admire that about Wolf Creek. It is very bleak, and it doesn't ever really get any better. But yeah, it's a good debut, I think, and a good example of another sort of Australian horror. Yeah.
Thinking about the films that it's obviously indebted to, like obviously Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. Another desert one.
Yeah, I won't spend too long on that one.
Yeah,
but The Hills Have Eyes.
Oh yeah, of course.
These sort of taking the horror film out of the sort of classical mythology, your Frankensteins, your Draculas, and placing it in America's backyard.
Yeah.
Really chilling, and it's, as you say, so effective in sort of cultivating like a fear and a tension. And it also, it's in these landscapes that the real behaviour of these people, often the victims, is revealed. I think we've talked about this before, but it says a lot about the power dynamics of the patriarchal American sort of family and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
lays it all bare in this setting. Yeah, desert's really good for that. Really good for horror films. I'm trying to think of other good desert horror movies.
Bone Tomahawk.
Oh, do you know what?
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, because you were talking about Wolf Creek and how brutal it is, and I was like, there's a film somewhere. Yeah, definitely.
It's similar in its content, I'd say, to Wolf Creek. Yeah,
what a film. I mean, it's one of my favourite westerns.
I'm not. Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's an excellent sort of mixing pot of genres. The third act is just so nail-bitingly dry and like arid, and like the blood soaks this kind of otherwise totally bone dry sort of landscape, which is almost sort of like hungry for this liquid. I just love it. I think it's fantastic.
And as a comment again on the sort of the white settlers' view of the landscape as something that's easily claimable.
Absolutely.
I think it's pretty effective. I mean, I know that film came under some flack for its presentation of the indigenous people.
Okay, I can understand.
Which, I could sort of think, it's pretty sort of, it's not a complimentary representation, but I think it works better on the reverse, as again a comment on the sort of arrogance of the white settler and all that sort of stuff. Great film. Yeah, the last 20 minutes are fucking awful.
Just
one of the most violent scenes I think I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, and it doesn't. I really do mean it when I say like the dryness of the surroundings doesn't help that feeling. You know?
and the narrative is quite dry.
Yeah,
it's quite a sort of sparsely sort of written story, really. I mean, I like the first 3/4 of that film is pretty. Obviously, there's enough dialogue to sort of push the narrative along, but it's very sparse. Which I think works to its what's the phrase I'm thinking?
Advantage.
Thank you. Yeah. No, great film. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, no, it just popped into my head actually. I was like, of course, that sounds a good one.
Such a good movie.
But sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, I remember watching that with Dale, who's a regular listener, and Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Partner Georgia, and she was fucking mortified by the end. And I don't blame her. I think we all were.
I remember not being ready for the amount.
Yeah.
Someone said it was violent, and I was like, oh, whatever, I can deal with it. And I sort of couldn't in a funny way.
No, I found myself really finding violence quite difficult as I get older.
Oh,
I
really?
still watch it. I still watch the films, but I have to be in like the right frame of mind.
Oh yeah,
it's that kind of violence as well, and that it did shake me a little bit. It did rattle me. Great film though, really, really great film.
Definitely. I just thought of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, actually.
Oh yeah, the bike scene.
Off the back of Bone Tomahawk. It's a similar type of desert where there's sort of scrubland, but there's plants in it. It's not like Dune or Mad Max where it's kind of very, very flat. I mean, Fury Road was filmed in Namibia, so it's like literally just sand. But then you have like Butch Cassidy, which is pretty much. I mean, the bits in the desert are like, kind of semi-desert but populated.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, anyway.
I mean, that is a film I've not seen for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
But yes, I do remember recalling it was that sort of setting.
I thought it deserved a mention because it just kind of. I was like, oh yeah, that's another one.
Yeah,
that's another classic.
I always think about the opening of 2001.
Oh God, of course. Okay, yeah. Again, it's sort of semi. I don't want to say alien because obviously it's the dawn of man, but the monolith thing really kind of flips that on its head a little bit, scientifically speaking. Anyway, that's a great opening.
I mean, that's a set, isn't it? I think that's all sets.
Yeah, all backdrops, but really well done.
Yeah.
It looks like sort of Arizona or something.
And I guess that speaks more broadly to the use of the desert, just from a sort of filmmaking perspective, is that you don't have to necessarily set these films in the countries where the film is set.
Yes,
a lot of like spaghetti westerns were shot in like Spain and
do you know
what I mean? It's like that landscape is
it's sort of interchangeable. Isn't it, yeah. Obviously, Star Wars wasn't really filmed on Tatooine.
No, I was devastated.
Yeah, I'm still reeling about that, actually.
Yeah.
Thanks a fucking bunch.
Yeah. Next you'll tell me wrestling isn't real.
Yeah. Yeah, that is all backdrop. It was really cleverly done because I've seen some shit backdrop desert sort of. I'm thinking sort of Asteroid City had a bit of that going on.
Wasn't that deliberate though?
Yeah, it must have been, but it annoyed me.
Yeah. It is that thing. I think we've said about this in the Asteroid City episode, but he's fucking riding his luck there, and Wes Anderson.
Yeah,
I like the film quite a lot, more than I was expecting to. So, but I think sometimes with him, give over.
Yeah.
We both know that's a mistake.
Yeah. Going back to Star Wars and like the idea of using the desert as a way of conveying an alien landscape. It definitely worked a lot better than Endor in Return of the Jedi, which just looked like an American forest, which I think it was.
Yeah.
And I think, because I suppose we have Mars on our doorstep, which is kind of... Have you seen pictures of Mars? The Martian landscape just sort of looks like Jordan or something. They filmed The Martian in Jordan. Going back to what you were saying earlier about using it as a proxy for another location, and it's like, I suppose that might be why it feels alien to us because of Mars, and the
that's
red
a really
planet.
good point. I've not quite considered that, and I think you're right when you think about the context of. It sort of goes back to what we were saying earlier about the idea of the desert being such like a popular location for films in terms of other biomes. It seems to be able to translate a lot more. And I think you're right. Certainly, the context of sci-fi. It lends itself to that the association with Mars. Yeah, I thought about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, also even like the earlier days of observing sort of Jupiter and Saturn, they're similarly coloured, sort of very orangey brown. So again, that's probably a very human thing.
Yeah, I don't thought about it that way. I guess another thing to do with the desert and its appeal is that you can associate it with ancient civilizations.
Okay, yeah.
So obviously Egypt,
yeah.
So the Mummy, Mummy Returns. What's the third one called?
Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
Oh, that's in China then.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So scratch that one.
Yeah.
Is it a desert in that one? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is Jet Li in that one?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
That's the only thing I remember about it. Yeah.
Although he's not a mummy. He's Scorpion King. Yeah. I quite like Scorpion King. I quite like the two Mummy films as well, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I don't mind
good
them.
Fun. They're like sort of Indiana Jones, sort of parallel, fun kind of romps.
I don't really have anything negative to say about them, especially.
No, they are childish, but they're sort of meant to be, I think.
Yeah. Indiana Jones again is another one. It's another desert movie.
Oh, well, yeah, of course, yeah. Again, the use of Middle Eastern countries for a lot of the locations. Mm-hmm. That story about how all of them got ill, and Harrison Ford was going to have a big old sword fight, and he just used his prop gun to shoot him.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that, particularly with Indiana Jones, it's about the sort of the Nazi obsession with the occult, isn't it?
Oh yeah, which is a real thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I guess that sort of ties more into the sort of the sort of hidden sort of secrets of ancient civilizations being locked away in the desert. Yeah, I know, especially these days, it's quite a subject to debate. About the pyramids and all that sort of stuff. And
some people think that there was helicopters back then because there was a cave painting that looks vaguely like a helicopter,
or like people being able to levitate stuff. I know that. Yeah, there's a sort of growing sort of movement that of. Obviously not necessarily scientists, I don't think, but people that seem to sort of put more on that landscape,
Yeah, the lack of anything. It's just like it invites that kind of way of thinking, doesn't it?
The idea that these civilizations existed and built things that, from a construction perspective, obviously I've fucking never built anything in my life. I can barely build shelves, but they're obviously subject to a lot of discussion and debate, aren't they? And it does tend to. It's that sort of voice about aliens and levitation seems to have grown considerably, at least to my mind, over the last sort of like 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, and then obviously that those civilizations in themselves were very spiritual, weren't they? So they had a lot of kind of religious ideas which showed up in their cave paintings and artwork and stuff, and so there's things that you find, like especially I'm thinking ancient Egypt, like Anubis and stuff. And how that translates back to the mummy is quite interesting because you have all of a sudden like a wealth of pre-designed creatures to include in your kind of narrative, of sort of swashbuckling adventure.
And you can almost feed on that sort of conspiratorial view of humanity's ancient history as well.
Yes,
with those films, like Pandora's Box and all that kind of stuff. And
I know, like Alien versus Predator did that.
Yeah, yes, it did. Yeah.
It leaned really heavily on the idea that all these sort of the pyramids of the world are all kind of because of aliens.
Yeah.
Disposed of very quickly by Ridley Scott in Prometheus, but
well, yeah,
that's fine.
I almost prefer the Alien versus Predator thing to Prometheus.
Yeah.
The sort of backdrop stuff, the thematic stuff.
There's a whole flashback sequence in that one. Which just sort of explains it really ham-fistedly. I love that.
Yeah, I do. So then, Mad Max.
Yes.
Walk us through it, Ben.
Okay, so a lot of people think that the first Mad Max was actually The Road Warrior, which is the second Mad Max.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole film before that, which this really annoyed me. I've got the DVD, like the box set, which obviously doesn't include Furiosa, so that's down the shitter now. But for a while, it was like the complete anthology. The first film is really well transferred onto DVD, so it looks amazing. Even by today's standards, I was watching on my telly thinking, like, okay, no, this is all right. The second and third ones look so bad, like VHS levels of bad.
Oh, really?
So I don't know what happened, but like they clearly spent too much money on the mastering of the first one, I guess. But anyway, side issue. But it does. There's this like really colourful, quite conventional in terms of plotting film behind these sort of weird deserty wasteland, kind of post-apocalyptic. Well, Mad Max, right? Like what everyone knows as Mad Max. The first one isn't like that at all. Like he's got a house by the beach, and there's a lot of amazing stunt work in it, but it was clearly, it's very cheaply made, and the apocalyptic stuff isn't really in it that much, and it's about Mad Max is a police officer in the first one. Effectively, he's like the last he's sort of like a
lawman, isn't he?
Yeah. At a time when the law is on the brink of collapse, but it's still, they're kind of like clinging on to it. And he's got a mate, Goose, who is sort of weirdly the main character for a bit of it. God, yeah, of course. Again, parallels to the Western, right? Oh, completely, yeah. Yeah, it's very much it's sort of a petrol head film. And there's a sort of fetishization of the car in it. He gets this car in the middle, and it's which survives right and through until Fury Road. Like there's always a mention of his car. The first one's quite good, but it's not a Mad Max film necessarily. It's like a prequel. If you can imagine a prequel to Mad Max, that's sort of what it is. I like it a lot. I thought it was really good fun. It's like lean 90 minutes, like and some amazing stunt work in it. Some of the best, I think, is actually in the first one. It's sort of hidden away. And again, with the budgetary constraints as well, that makes it all the more sort of commendable. Yeah, completely. Yeah, and I'm fairly sure they just did a lot of this without proper permission or anything. So the stunts could afford to be slightly more dangerous because there was no unions or anything. First one is great. I mean, they're all great. I think they're all fantastic, but the second one is where it starts. This is The Road Warrior. It's the most famous one, I think, of the original three. Yeah, definitely. And this is where it starts to introduce the almost sort of there's a lot of sort of homoerotic costumes. It's a very homoerotic franchise. Yeah. I mean, Furiosa particularly. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Completely. Dripping with it. I think, they kind of take that kind of muscly macho persona and flip it on its head and make it very. It's just presented differently. And there's a lot of kind of, you could argue, also sort of S&M style costumes in it as well. Everyone has like their own helmet, and some of them are completely covered up by like these spikes, and so if you imagine like a raider or like a bandit, I guess, post-apocalyptic bandit, the imagery you probably would think of would be Mad Max, would originate from Mad Max, I would say. And that's when all that kind of stuff is introduced. It is the best one, I think, in terms of how it's shot, for its time anyway. Very simple, stripped back. It's like a chase, basically. The whole thing is kind of a chase. Yeah. This is the one where I think... I'm not sure if it's Gastown, because Gastown is in in Furiosa, isn't it? But it's a very similar town where it's like a sort of mineral-rich area, and it's very obvious what it's trying to say about like the kind of scarcity of this kind of oil. So that's the second one.
Is it right? Am I right in thinking? I mean, this is just something that popped in my head, but it's like the relationship the audiences have from Mad Max 1 to Road Warrior is quite similar to the way people think about Evil Dead.
Yes, yeah.
You know, like everyone sort of says, well, Evil Dead 2 is the sort of better version of Evil Dead 1.
Yeah.
When really they're both great in their own way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I sort of, that just came to me, but I sort of thinking about it in that way, I sort of feel like Mad Max, there's definite parallels there in the sort of audience relationship with those films, and also just the films themselves, because both the first Evil Dead and the first Mad Max are obviously films that are, I wouldn't say hamstrung by budget, that would be the wrong way to say it, because I think in a way it encourages a sort of greater level of invention.
Yeah.
But then you get the sequels that really allow to sort of, because of the financial investment, really become like more refined, I guess. Yeah,
that's exactly what happened. I'm fairly sure he always wanted it to be post-apocalyptic, but in the second one, George Miller could like afford to actually do that.
Yeah, to realise it. Yeah.
Completely. And there was, so I guess in between the first and the second one, there's a nuclear apocalypse that always gets referenced in the opening sort of 5 minutes of Mad Max film, quite often with the same footage.
Yes,
of those trees bending, which is fake, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah. Like how, because the camera would blow over as well. You think about it, like a lot of this sort of nuclear devastation footage is all made up.
Well, there we go.
As an aside, back to Mad Max.
No, it's good. It's
so that's my other podcast, like the Debunkathon or something. The Road Warrior is great. It was literally, my viewing experience was hampered by how shit the DVD quality was.
What? Who's the distribution company?
I know Warner Brothers.
It's Warner Brothers, isn't it?
Yeah.
They can be a bit patchy with DVD transfers.
Yeah. It just felt like an afterthought. It's a shame because the second and third ones are great. The third one is, the second one there's like the feral child, which is kind of an interesting addition. It sort of develops the Mad Max character in the same way that Terminator 2 does. You know, it kind of gives him there's a sort of slight emotional edge to him. It's also, Mad Max 2 is when I realised, when I rewatched it, I was like, this guy is not invincible at all. He's not like the archetypal hero at all. He's like very prone to mistakes and injury. And they do they really use that in like throughout the franchise. Like in Fury Road, he sort of spends the first half of the film as like a universal blood bank donor, doesn't he? Like with that. So he's not he's not invincible. And I quite like that about him, and he's kind of like very obviously flawed, and he quite often only says like 30 lines in an entire film, including the Road Warrior as well. But do you remember the third one? I think this is the most distinct.
Thunderdome.
Yeah.
With
Tina Turner.
Yeah.
This one is set in half of it's set in Bartertown, which is like it's just another town, right? It's almost like a video game the way these towns are placed.
Yeah.
And the first half's great. There's a really great sequence which kind of goes away from the petrol heady cars to sort of bare knuckle fighting with bungee cords in Thunderdome. But it is really wacky as well. There's loads of kids in the second half, which sort of do you remember the kids?
Yeah,
at all?
I do remember it being like the sort of most sort of stylistically absurd of the three films.
It is. I think it's a product of its time, whereas the other two are a bit less so. Like it's very 80s, and it's got 2 Tina Turner songs in it. One of them called "We Don't Need a Hero," actually. So there you go. Kind of interesting. But But yeah, the imagery's really cool in it. Like, it's got that dusty, wastelandy vibe, which, you know, properties like Fallout have aped. Arguably, I would say they took a lot of inspiration from Mad Max. Amongst like films like The Book of Eli are like heavily indebted to that. Yeah, you know, that kind of, that sort of.
Yeah, even like the Fallout video game series probably has borrowed a lot from Mad Max.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Even down to the Raiders in that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. When you were saying about the sort of homoerotic attire. There's something interesting about that, actually. I was thinking about what you were saying earlier about the sort of homoerotic attire and the sort of S&M stuff.
Yeah.
It ties in with what sort of Miller does with the human form as well.
Okay, yeah.
Because he does tend to have a habit of casting individuals that seem to have some kind of like deformities.
Yes, and
I wonder if that's some kind of like broader comment on the sort of way in which we perceive sort of fringe societies or fringe cultures or people that are pushed to the fringes because of these deformities by a society. You know, it's just a thought really, because it seems like quite a common thread in his films, and you know, the idea that this sort of style has become the style.
Yes,
you know, like
it's now the mainstream. I guess.
It's almost like a way people maybe sort of surrendered to this sort of fringe culture now that you know that society's collapsed. And all of the values have collapsed. Yeah.
As soon as there's no society anymore, the people that have been pushed to the edge of it will probably thrive. Yeah. I didn't think about that, actually. That's really interesting.
But I mean, I don't want to sort of tie it, but you know, like the idea that, you know, because particularly in Furiosa and Fury Road, I'm using these two because they're the ones I remember the most. You know, there is a lot of actors in there that do have disabilities, you know, visual disabilities.
Yeah.
And I wonder again if it's a sort of that sort of idea. You know, it ties into the sort of nature of the dystopian landscape, but it's almost like a confrontation of confronting people with that, you know.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, actually. But you're right, yeah, that it's populated with, it's a very unique individual. Uniqueness is like a big thing in the franchise as well. Like, no two people have the same costume apart from like the War Boys maybe, but you, especially in Road Warrior, like everyone has their own thing. It's like they've just been given a scrapyard basically, and they've said like, all right, your costumes are in there somewhere, make them up, like make them from nothing. Like, this is very much your kind of your vehicle, your own style. And the aesthetic of this world isn't going to be governed by repetition.
Or conformity or anything like that. Like,
exactly, yeah. I do really. I mean, I wasn't aware of the just quite like homoerotic some of it is, but like you get these sort of leather pants that have like the backs ripped out on loads of the.
Well, I mean, in that sort of heat, it's going to be beneficial to you today. If you're going to wear leather,
I suppose, actually.
You've got to put holes in it.
Yeah.
It's not the most sort of appropriate attire for the landscape, is it?
No, yeah. But they're robust, I suppose.
That's true.
The idea.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's very true. No, I don't know. Like, it sort of makes me think of this is a bizarre sort of filmmaker to attach it to, but like Harmony Korine and or Todd Solondz, you know, those kinds of filmmakers that force audiences to reckon with the aspects of society, be that sort of fringe sort of societies that behave in a way that is perceived odd by broader society in terms of their sexual proclivities or anything like that, or indeed the way we view disability, both mental and physical disability. You know, I feel like there's real parallels there, and the way that sort of Harmony Korine particularly, I always think of Gummo in this instance, the scene with the boy eating spaghetti.
I was just about to think, isn't there bacon taped to the edge of the...
Yeah,
and you're like, what?
I mean, it's fringe societies in the sense that they're pushed there because of this difference, because of this oddity.
Yeah.
Or because of their sort of economic situation, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just wonder if there's any influence there. I mean, there must be, but... I sort of found myself thinking about Harmony Korine quite a lot during Furiosa.
Yeah, I can understand that, actually. There's definitely a focus on disability, even down to Furiosa not having an arm. And how that kind of weirdly is an empowerment of her character. It's not seen as a kind of a thing that's holding her back. actually all it does is it means she can steer things quicker. And there is definitely kind of a flipping things on its head, even back in the sort of late 70s, 80s when these films were being made. I think that must have been at the back of George Miller's mind.
Yeah.
Because it isn't just in the recent ones. This kind of
idea.
Not
at all. Yeah, no.
I was weirdly, there's parts of it which made me think of the second Nightmare on Elm Street film.
Okay.
Which has a lot of that sort of homoerotic subtext as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of just moments which you kind of think like, this must be intentional. It just has to be.
It's the same when you think about Commando, right?
Yeah,
I mean, You know, the net vest, the mustache,
the muscles.
I don't know if like Miller's level of it is the same as Commando, but I like the idea that these filmmakers are like making films that at face value fall in line with dominant ideology of the time. But really they're made more for people to sort of reflect on 20, 30 years later. As like a historical artifact, a sort of subtle inversion of like a character trope or because how you can watch Commando not think it's homoerotic. I mean, I just
it's baffling. It's crazy, isn't it?
You'd have to be denying a lot in yourself, I think. I mean, excellent film. I absolutely adore Commando. It's like one of my favourite ever action films. Partly for that reason, that sort of
its embrace of that. Kind of
and the way I think it tricked a lot of like, hard body kind of blokes into like sort of celebrating something which is really quite homoerotic. I'm not sure if I guess with Mad Max it's more using the sort of the discomforting nature of the dystopian setting to accentuate those anxieties about fringe culture and disability and all those things that are very much present in even contemporary society. I think a lot of people are quite, when they're confronted with it in quite a visceral manner, it would probably unearth a lot of hidden sort of discomfort and biases that they probably hide from themselves. And I reckon that would probably be more apparent back then.
Also, Mad Max never has a love interest. He's very much like
he's his own man.
He's his own guy. He's a lone wanderer.
Tina Turner, does he not get?
No. She's very much the villain by the end of.
Oh, she is, isn't she?
Thunderdome.
Yeah.
They have a brief interaction, a friendly interaction, but it's not even remotely romantic. He's sort of a grizzled asexual, just wandering this land, helping one person, moving to the next person, helping that community.
Does his wife get killed in one of them?
Yeah.
The very first one, right?
In the first one,
his wife and kid.
Yeah, he's got a baby in that one. Yeah, but it all just that all just kind of gets swept under the rug in the second one.
Yeah.
I feel like, again, Miller was definitely, he had something that he wanted to explore, and I don't think he refined the idea enough until The Road Warrior, which is why a lot of people assume the second one is the first one. But there are, that's not to say that he's a sort of, he's kind of emotionless. There's definitely attachments that he forms throughout the series.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But they're always marred by his, like, almost social ineptitude. And his kind of, his sort of listlessness kind of always wins at the end, and he's always wandering off. That's his thing. He's just wandering off at the end.
Speaks more to the nature of a dystopian setting, I guess. This sort of refusal to bend the knee to conventional narrative, conventional Hollywood narrative. About having to inject some warmth into something.
Absolutely. It does it really well.
I admire.
Yeah, I think so. I think it kind of bosses that. It's got its own unique set of rules, but they keep. But you sort of feel like it's okay if they're broken as well, because each film is really unique as well. Like it sort of exists on its own. You don't really need to watch them in any order, I don't think.
No, you don't have to at all. Actually, that's a good point.
I'd say this Furiosa, this new one, is probably the most franchisey of the lot, because all of the rest of them are very much their own thing.
Yeah, it's franchisey in the sense that it is a prequel, right?
Yeah, it's clearly riding off the success of Fury Road and continued kind of cult success of it. I do think it came a bit too late, but that's not anyone's fault. There's all sorts that kind of went
Fury
wrong.
Road, I mean, in itself was such a long period of time after Thunderdome, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, like 20 years, I guess. I think it was 1985 that Thunderdome came out, or something like that, and then Fury Road was 2015. So,
oh wow,
yeah, crazy. No, I really admire. I had a really great time watching them all. Actually, they're really easy breezy watches, and they've got some amazing stunts in them. All of them have reading about these stunts, like, geez, you'd never be able to get away with it today. No way. They had one chap crash I think it's at the end of the second one, there's one of the rigs, like, it flips over, and they said to him, don't eat anything for 12 hours before you do this, just in case you need to have surgery. And he did it anyway, apparently. It's so ridiculous. I think he was alright in the end, but yeah, they did tell him not to eat anything for that reason.
Wow. It's crazy.
Love it.
But even, if you think about Fury Road, like, even obviously I imagine health and safety was in full swing there. There's a real sense that it hasn't sort of necessarily inhibited the sort of the propulsive sort of dizzying nature of that movie, because that was, I remember coming out of that, I think I said this in the outro of the last episode, but it was such an exhausting film to watch because there was just so much fucking stimuli, much going on, and I just thought, like, just from the perspective of, like, directing all of that, let alone all of the craft and the stunt work and the cinematography, like, I don't know, like, it's like Miller's like a mad genius. Do you know what I mean? Like, he has that, he gives him that sort of look as someone that's, like, fusing man and machine in such a beautiful way.
It is beautiful.
That still sort of suggests chaos, which is reflected in the nature of the dystopian setting. But there's a real. He's like conducting it almost.
Oh yeah. It's like kind of operatic,
unreal. Like, I just remember coming away from it thinking, like, fucking hell. Like, okay, it's not very. It's pretty narrative light. Yeah,
they just go. They basically, the whole film is they go to a place and they come back. Yeah, that's it. But that doesn't matter. Like,
it's just it's as an exercise in. And again, I think we'll talk about this more in the context of Furiosa, but because I think he probably does it better in Furiosa here. But Miller knows how to sort of, like, keep narratives lean, but not sacrifice sort of thematic potency. Which I think is a real skill, given particularly in the case of Fury Road, the amount of time you spend just watching what is essentially like a 2.5 hour, 2 hour?
Just 2 hours, this one.
Like a 2 hour fucking action scene, basically.
Yeah, but you still get, again, you can infer the meaning from the action. Like, especially with regards to, there's a lot of, especially more so in Fury Road than in Furiosa, I'd say. Feminism is like a big thing in that, and the idea of, what... I suppose, this Imperator is trying to force the sort of old convention, very old convention, and, like, the idea of him being polygamous, and and then Furiosa breaking away from that, not just herself, but with all of his wives as well. Like, but he doesn't. There's no dialogue about that. It just happens in front of you, and you can easily infer it, but it doesn't mean it's not. And it's still. I think in that sense it's sort of quite graceful, like the way he lays all that out. I think, Fury Road is something else. And I know that's nothing. No, a lot of people have said that's nothing new, but I watched it again recently as part of this little box set. Thankfully, the transfer was much better again.
I was gonna say, I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
Beautiful, really, like, gorgeously shot. And
isn't there a black and white version?
The chrome edition. That got released afterwards.
A few films did that around that period. Like Logan did it.
Really? I didn't know Logan
black
did
and
it.
White. Yeah, there's a black and white Logan version, I'm pretty sure.
Kind of, I can understand why you would release a black and white version.
I think it's sort of paying homage to the genres that the film is kind of working with, right? Like, like the Western and No, I'd like to see the chrome version of Mad Max Fury Road.
I think I'd have to see it at the cinema.
Yeah, I do think that with those kind of experiments. It's a cool idea, but
Yeah.
rather than just not watching colour at home.
You could literally just turn the saturation on your TV down and you'd kind of have it, I suppose. I know there's no colour grading in it, which would make the contrast different and whatever, but like you could do that. I could make a chrome edition of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone as well. Just turn down the saturation on your TV.
I do it with Casablanca. Well, hang on.
Yeah. Turn it up.
Give colour to it.
Yeah.
No, I loved Fury Road a lot. Just as a, I think that just the craft of it and the way in which Miller is so sparing with the narrative detail and threading it amongst the craft of, what is, like I say, essentially like a 2-hour action set piece. And the invention, it really holds true to the sort of wackiness that the films have.
Completely.
The sense of humour the film has, the franchise has, and how that ties in again to the themes we're talking about around the sort of like, the sort of the distorted human form or the leather-clad human form and what that sort of represents. It all feels very, to me anyway, it feels very cohesive and sort of just so refined.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think he storyboarded it before he wrote the script.
Yeah, the script is storyboarded, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah,
I remember because I was really obviously I read a lot of scripts, but what really interested me that particularly was the fact that it was so light on dialogue.
Yeah.
How do you write that as a script? Because if you think about something like Under the Skin, it's still written very much in a conventional way. It's just each sort of action is 2 or 3 lines. It's like a paragraph.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas this is like description and pictures, which I've never seen in a script before. But it makes sense in a film like Fury Road to have that because it's such a, as we've said, like a very, it's so hard baked into the film itself, into the visuals.
Yeah. They also they make use of, if you watch it again, you can sort of tell, especially when people are running. They speed it up a lot. So
Yeah.
Like that's a thing. That's a thing that Mad Max does, and they do it a bit in Furiosa as well. A bit less actually, but everything is slightly sped up, so it just looks a bit weird and wonky. Like,
I think that
when people are like vaulting fences, they do it really quickly and stuff like that. It works really well with cars because cars aren't, can't jump over anything in themselves. Like they're just, the wheels are turning, and it's easy to fake motion with cars. But when you see people moving really quickly, it's quite jarring, but it's very Mad Max that, and Fury Road doubles down on it. There's loads of that stuff in it. I could bang on about Fury Road for a really long time actually, thinking about it.
It's an excellent film.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Furiosa then.
Yes.
Furiosa,
a Mad Max cigar.
To me it felt like Miller was regrafting the sort of skin onto a narrative that he'd hacked off for Fury Road. Do you know what I mean? Like it is, we talk about Fury Road in the context of being so lean, and I think Furiosa is pretty lean too.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more time spent with setting and the characters.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's what makes it so different. And I think I remember sort of reading a lot of the early buzz about the film. I generally tried to ignore it, but I was sort of hooked in by this, people saying, don't expect Fury Road 2.0 because that's not what this film is. This is like a revenge movie, like a revenge western.
Yeah.
And through that, there are going to be prolonged periods of characterization that aren't in Fury Road.
Yeah, definitely.
So I sort of went in already expecting that, and I was wondering when the film started, I was like, how is he going to thread that into his style? The narrative economy of Fury Road is just so sparse, or it feels sparse.
Yeah.
But I was, I'm pleased to report that it to me it felt absolutely vital to this film.
Yeah.
And it felt vital to this film in the sense that, I don't know, like it almost lends itself to the narratively sparse nature of Fury Road. It's like the film I didn't realise Fury Road needed.
Yeah. That's
you know what
true,
I mean?
Actually. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
And almost because of that time spent with the characters a little bit more. But again, sort of baking it into the sort of the imagery of the film. It's a lot more surreal. A lot of the imagery is quite surreal. and the characterization, a lot of it's done through expression of faces, eyes burning with phosphoric intention through landscapes, and sun-scarred faces clad in war paint, just contorting in pain or horror or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot more sort of confidence in performance in this film, I think.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a lot more character in it. There's a lot more character development, specifically with obviously like the kind of titular Furiosa. And it does do a really good job of keeping the action going, but not being afraid to try something quieter at moments. And I didn't actually consider the idea that it was kind of more confident. But I do actually, you are right. It is a lot more. It's confident to be its own thing. It's confident enough to introduce new settings and new characters without it feeling fluffy, I suppose. And in my eyes, this has been a criticism of it, but I don't think it sacrifices much visually either.
No,
I think it's less realistic looking, but that is sort of definitely intentional. Like you say, it's sort of more surreal, and there's a lot more. Like the sky is a lot more unusual at points, and they double down on that day for night grade thing that they do. There's a lot of that in it. And the first scene as well is like in a sort of forest. There's the green place, and you're like, okay, so you're introduced to Furiosa in a setting which you'll never see again. I thought it was really, really good for that. I was also surprised at how long it spent with the young Furiosa as well.
Yeah, I was thinking that, like, Anna Taylor-Joy doesn't turn up for a good hour.
She's not really the centerpiece for this. And you'd expect someone with her star power to contractually be obligated to sort of be in it for a certain amount of time, but she seemingly is. She's sort of in it for about half of it, I'd say, maybe a bit
and
more.
And she fucking earns it by the end. I think she's so good at it by the end.
She's great, yeah. She's
consistently great. But the moment she shares with Hemsworth at the end is just, so good.
Yeah, that there's a really wonderful moment at the end where they're talking. I mean, I won't go into too much detail, but they're talking about a lot of dense, heavy kind of stuff about revenge, and they do that really well as well. There's some dialogue in this which is sort of unexpectedly poignant and interesting, and it lends that is attributed to villains, which I thought
layers both characters really nicely, I think. But not in a way that feels like sort of the overladling of needless exposition, you know? Because that could so easily derail an experience like this. I think for a lot of people, that's probably for them. Their criticism is that like it derails that sort of like propulsive, ever-moving, action-filled sort of narrative that I think people have come to expect, even though it's one movie that set that expectation up. Like the older Mad Max films, certainly the latter two are full of action, but there are sort of quieter moments in the films. And I think that Furiosa is a sort of hark back to that, you know. But I still feel that, you know, despite those sort of moments of relative calm, you know, it doesn't really ever feel that way to me. It never felt that way to me. Like I was never bored at any point during the film's 2.5 hour runtime.
It is long, isn't it?
You know, it all felt still meaningful, that it was moving forward, and you know that progress was still being made, and it didn't feel like Miller was sacrificing on that style of his too much, if at all.
No, definitely not. And it's punctuated still by some great action sequences, there's one which is about the same length as a Fury Road action sequence. I'm thinking when the sort of shiny new war rig is on the road. I think is it going towards Bullet Town? I can't remember, or the Bullet
Gas
Factory.
Town, one of them.
That's a great action sequence, and that kind of has all of the tropes that you'd come to expect from, let's say, if this was a kind of franchise in the traditional sense. I think if another director had taken over, the whole film would have just been that sequence, probably. But there's also sort of, you know, it's not afraid to slow down. I'm thinking more, again, when it gets to the kind of Bullet Factory. There is an action sequence there, but it's a lot more kind of strategic. And that was really good as well. Chris Hemsworth is great in it. I thought he was really good.
Oh man, like it's funny for him because when he started out as Thor, everyone was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And the first couple of Thor films, he's pretty like as you'd imagine anyone to play Thor. And then he sort of grew into the role, didn't he? And I mean, I'm sort of don't want to give any sort of Marvel films too much credit, but you know, like. Because they get enough of it. But, you know, Hemsworth really, I think, grew in confidence with that character, and I think he did take it places to make it one of the more entertaining and likable characters. And I've always wondered about his ability to play something away from that, like a squeaky clean hero, like a hero you expect to see packed on a fucking lunchbox, you know. And I was so pleasantly surprised with how good he was in this. Like, not only did he take to the villain role so well, he also embodied the sort of like the nature of the universe that Miller has created. You know, there's a sort of like larger than life quality to it, but it's still sort of baked in some sort of grim reality. And I think his portrayal of that was spot on.
Yeah, there's moments where because it's quite often it's a trope with villains. I'm thinking like the Joker, where they're just seemingly all powerful, and it's sort of the reverse in this, in that he's actually kind of an idiot. He's kind of not very good he's not a very good leader. He's overconfident, and he's for
himself. He's self-serving
completely. And he's incredibly brash. But Chris Hemsworth kind of he injects all those qualities into him, but he also manages to keep him reasonably human as well.
Yeah, he inverts it, doesn't he? In a way, I think like Miller's, you know, trajectory for that character inverts him in that sense, doesn't it? Because he starts off probably at the best position his character is in is when he is at the start, when he has that sort of like army of bikers. He's like the sort of Genghis Khan of the outback.
Yeah.
And then that slowly fizzles away the longer that he's in charge. And then at the end, he's sort of quite a tragic and pathetic character by the end. And that's when he starts to sort of reveal, in perhaps more classic Hollywood narrative style, but you know, what made him who he is. And again, that still feels like hard baked into this sort of mythology of Mad Max. Or the Mad Max world. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think it's a performance that could, you know, go one way or the other for a lot of people.
Agreed. Yeah, it's very big, and it's quite nasally. But apparently that's a real thing, a real Australian sort of trope of previous generation, is that a lot of them had that kind of sort of nasally voice, like ladies and gentlemen, like they kind of had that sort of that twang about them. So he was apparently kind of basing it off a lot of his family members, which is quite funny.
No, I thought he was excellent in it. And I'm really interested to see where he goes next, because I think he has real potential to, you know, go into interesting projects like this. And I think he's got the chops to do it. I think he's different to like Chris Evans, for example. I think Chris Evans has sort of struggled to get rid of the tag, the Captain America squeaky clean image. Even in like Knives Out, it's still sort of there. I think Hemsworth has got a bit more about him.
I think Hemsworth has got the ability and is unafraid of stripping away anything charming. Just to kind of reveal the sort of grotesque. I know that the prosthetic nose helps, but you get lost in his speeches and stuff quite a lot as well, and like his deeply flawed nature is quite captivating. And he's got like a sort of 3 motorbikes strapped together with like flags on the back. It's just so weird. It's kind of like a child has constructed this out of Lego or something.
It's that sort of classic dictator thing where they believe in their own mythology, their own hype. Do you know what I mean? No, I so much praise for him, actually. I was I'm again interested to see where he takes this, because this could go somewhere interesting if he finds the right projects.
I hope so. I absolutely agree.
Because it's hard, isn't it, for a lot of these actors to shake a role that they've had for such a long time. And I think Mad Max could be a real switch for him.
Yeah, I hope so.
Should these kinds of roles make themselves available? But yeah, no, good. He's good in it.
He's very good. Yes. So I wanted to touch on briefly on the visual effects, of which there are numerous, and of which Fury Road actually has a lot as well.
Course,
so I've got I do sort of have a slight theory as to why some of it. A lot of people are saying there's loads of green screen in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's happened, right, is Namibia, when they filmed Fury Road in Namibia, they filmed this one in Australia. Namibia is, I've looked this up, the climate is very consistent, so you'll have months where there's not a cloud in the sky, whereas Australia is a lot more rainfall, not universally, but I think it's very challenging to film in the outback, like in the middle of nowhere, so they have to film closer to the coastal areas. And I basically think they had to replace loads of the skies because of an inconsistency of, and that is what we're seeing. I don't think it's green screen. I really don't. I think it's a lot of location work that has had to have been tampered with, more so than Fury Road ever needed to be.
Okay.
Just wanted to put that out there.
No, that's interesting, and I think it's cool that it's shot in Australia.
Yeah.
I mean, it really feels like it's theirs, right? It's like an Australian movie,
completely.
So to shoot it there to me makes more sense. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I mean, Namibia's a stunning location and it works for Fury Road.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think Fury Road needed that realistic quality, whereas I don't think this really does.
No,
it stands on its own 2 feet, like you say, with a sort of more surrealist opener. What an opener as well! The kind of slow motorbike chase.
Yeah.
That was really, really, really good. The ability of Furiosa to sort of outsmart these people, whereas simultaneously kind of losing and sort of giving in to them at the same time is really cool. It
almost feels like he's subverting the expectations around himself.
Yeah.
Because that first chase sequence is brilliant, but it's very stop-start, and it's
day, night,
sort of jumping around. There's no consistency to it. I don't know. It felt like a really interesting sort of experiment or mediation on his own sort of approach to action sequences. And again, that sort of expectation that has been established by Fury Road. I like that he's sort of like tampering with that. Because I don't know, I just think it's great that, like blockbuster filmmakers do that kind of stuff. Like they don't just sort of surrender to what their fans want or their audiences want. I think we say this a lot on Cineboys, but fans get what they want all the fucking time.
Oh god,
so, at the end of the day, I like it, even if the exercise doesn't always work, which in this case it does. But I like it when people go, do you know what, fuck you lot.
We're gonna do this. I'm not doing the same thing again. I already did that. I did that before. I'm going to try something else now. And the film is so much better for it, for sure. Yeah, they spend a lot of time in the same locations, though, which I found really interesting. So, the Citadel was in both a lot. I don't think Gastown is in Fury Road, but it's in the distance, and it does feel like it's trying something new with the way it's made, but being very careful to set it in familiar places, I guess.
I guess because I didn't realise, but it does sort of almost immediately by the end of the film lean into Fury Road, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Basically the start of Fury Road.
Yeah, which I wasn't expecting.
No, I thought there'd be a little bit more space there.
But it's punctuated by Chris Hemsworth as a tree.
Yeah.
Which I thought was so good.
Yeah.
And I like, there's a kind of moment in it where it's explained how he could have met his end. And then the narrator is very clear about saying, but actually, this is what happened. Yeah. He's still alive. Like he's kind of, this is what are them? There's 5 acts to this, and the last one is called like Beyond Vengeance, I think.
Yeah,
and that's sort of what happens to him. Is it's like a fate worse than vengeance. I thought that was really good. Yeah.
I also liked that it sort of builds up to that sort of big factional war, and then it doesn't show it. It shows the aftermath of it. Again, I'm not sure if that's maybe more down to budgetary constraints, although I can't imagine so. No, I just like that as like a sort of again, like a sort of boldness in narrative. No, you're not having this sort of grand finale.
It's
about Furiosa's revenge. And what is he called? Dementus.
Dementus.
It's about these two characters and their, and that arc.
Yeah, that's all that really matters,
and that cuts through all of the sort of like mythology of the setting, and to focus on those two characters, I thought again was another really interesting way to sort of like subvert audience expectation, deprive it of that sort of expansive epicness that I think audiences have come to demand from blockbuster films. And focus it on a more sort of low, two characters. I thought that was really bold, and I think it worked really well.
Completely.
Great. I just love it, and I can't say that enough. And I think it's an interesting beast, Mad Max, because we do live in this sort of era where this, the superhero franchise is sort of, it's a dominant boxer that's had a punch that's wobbled it a little bit. We're not sure if the follow-up punch is going to completely knock it out, or is it going to, to keep this bizarre metaphor going. Is it going to, steady itself and keep fighting? We're in this bizarre period now where like we're getting like films like Dune and Mad Max that obviously are franchise films to a degree, but they're made, I don't know, like they just feel separate to that sort of franchise filmmaking ethos.
I know
assembled,
exactly
the way that they're made, the sense of craft, and that opens it up to new avenues of criticism for sure. Particularly, I think more in the case of Dune. I actually think I preferred Mad Max to Dune. But these films exist, and it's good.
I think so.
And I'd be interested to see how Mad Max continues in this sort of potentially post superhero era of blockbuster cinema.
I know this one isn't. I really hope it has legs at the box office because it had quite a low opening weekend.
Did he offer any reasons as to that? Because I'd read that, but I didn't read any further in.
It's a thing in America where they have like weird. They have like sort of public holidays a lot, and they so this is Memorial Day. Whatever the hell.
That's probably a big reason why people weren't at the cinema then.
And I think the genre and the style of it didn't marry into American audiences' expectations as to what was going to be at the box office.
Okay.
And so, but it's still number one, so it was popular. I think it's going to take a while for it to make its money back. I think it probably will make its money back, but as to George Miller's next endeavour, was Mad Max: The Wasteland, which I really hope happens, because
I think fuck it. I mean, why not?
Just if you're worried about the money, then just give him 100 instead of 160 million. Like, I'm sure he'll be able to. He's inventive enough to craft something interesting out of that.
I think he'll want a big budget though.
He probably will, yeah. I know he's had some disagreements with studios in the past for that reason. Pay for Fury Road, actually.
Oh, really?
I think one of the reasons why this one was so delayed was that he was involved in a sort of legal dispute with Warner Brothers about how his crew were paid in Australia or something. I think. Well, I mean, Warner Brothers are. Again, they've got a shaky history with all this kind of stuff.
Oh, God, yeah. What film studio doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. I know, I think, I mean, it's been a long time since I've sat down and by the end not wanted the film to end. And this did happen with that. And it actually didn't happen in June. I do like June. I think I like June a bit more than you, but yeah, it's just nice to have these films around, and I hope it does sort of take over a little bit.
Yeah, it's just like it. I mean, I wouldn't say that sort of parallels are completely there, but it does sort of hark back to the era where blockbusters. There were, obviously there were these big events, big tentpole events for the industry, but they had like a craft to them, and they weren't sort of necessarily indebted too much to a structure, like a structure. I mean, obviously. The nature of a blockbuster is that it will have to like lean into lots of genres and try and appeal to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
But there's still such a broad scope to be inventive and work within that, and I think we're starting to see that sort of come back. Because there's been a long old time of one genre that's dominated everything, and it's really changed the landscape of the industry in terms of what these film studios aspire to want, which is the same thing.
Yeah.
So to see, a few filmmakers be able to break through that,
It's great.
I think it's quite refreshing, and
Yeah.
doesn't mean they're going to be critically bulletproof, as we've said, but it's just nice that these films exist, and I hope more filmmakers are given a bit more of a chance to sort of work with these franchises. And it's great that George Miller's been able to shepherd this throughout the whole of its life and his life.
It's his
79.
thing.
I had no idea.
He was a doctor when he made Mad Max.
Oh, was he?
There's a lot of doctoral kind of medical imagery in the Mad Max franchise.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Like
again, the body manipulation and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean,
that makes more sense now in that context.
He saw a lot of people who had been in car accidents.
Okay.
In his sort of early career before switching. So I think that's what he based the first Mad Max off, is the kind of this sort of the idea that human beings could be so grotesquely mangled.
by their own invention. It's sort of like similar to Ballard Crash, right?
Of course, yeah.
Or the fetishization of injury as a result of I'm intrigued to see what he does with it, and I hope he gets to make the Wasteland.
He might be. It might be like a TV series or something.
No.
I know. Yeah, I know.
Don't get me wrong. I know I'm not a big TV guy, and it's not because I'm snobbish about TV. I know there's lots of great TV, but Mad Max belongs on the cinema screen.
Yeah.
The scope of that needs the cinema screen, I think.
I deliberately got a seat quite close to the screen.
Yeah, so
I'm really glad I did.
Yeah. I sat like 3 rows back because obviously whenever you book a cinema ticket, like everyone's always booked out in the middle. And that was the only row that didn't, and I thought we should try it, and it really worked actually.
Seats were rumbling whenever the engine started and stuff.
Really getting the whole experience.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Yeah, but
please watch it. Yeah,
you should,
because it needs attendance. I think this kind of film really needs to prove that this kind of thing can make money. So,
although apparently I was reading that what's that John Krasinski kids film with Ryan Reynolds? What's that called?
If
that's knocked it off the top spot.
Fuck. Oh well.
Yeah. Fucking idiots.
Might be amazing. You never know.
Yeah. True. Yeah. True. Yeah.
Right. Outro.
Sorry.
No. It's fine. Outro.
Questing the cinematic void.
There we have it then.
Yeah. Yeah, there we have it. Good stuff. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, no, I think once we settled into the desert theme, we got a few sort of good, interesting takes on things out there.
There was always a bit of worry. We thought, fucking hell, we're clutching at straws here. Or we get that vibe from the first 2 or 3 minutes. But no, it's okay. Good stuff. Yeah. Next week, we're going to move away from the big sort of sparkly lights of the blockbuster.
Yeah,
we've been there for a while. We've resided in the good, on this area of Hollywood for a while, or films.
And also, there's not really much coming up that it piqued my interest in terms of mainstream stuff.
I think a few weeks there's going to be some belters coming.
Yeah, okay.
But the Watershed is still playing a lot of stuff that I've been meaning to catch but haven't had the time to.
Nice.
So in that spirit, we are going to talk about La Camera.
Yes. Sorry if that's the wrong pronunciation.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that is the right one. But Josh O'Connor, of course, of Challengers fame.
Challengers, God's Own Country, a film I absolutely adore.
Yes, I saw a trailer for it, and I thought, oh.
Yeah. And also he's in The Crown, which I haven't seen, but...
plays King Charles, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah, he's actually from Cheltenham.
Is he?
Yeah. It's crazy. He does a really convincing Yorkshire accent in God's Own Country. But I am kind of following his career with with quite a lot of interest. Actually, I haven't seen Challengers, but
he's good in it.
Yeah, I've heard he's very good in it.
Yeah, he's arguably the strongest performer, I would say.
Okay.
Worth a go, that film. I'm not a big Luca Guadagnino fan. I wouldn't say I dislike him, but I'm just not as emphatically into him as a lot of people are.
Fair enough, yeah.
But I did enjoy Challengers, and he's very good in it, so
nice.
Give it a go. Yeah, this is from
Luca Guadagnino.
Alice. I believe it's Rawaka.
Rawaka, okay.
I don't know. Again, sorry.
But it's okay. I mean, yeah, just a different dialect. we mean well.
Yes, we do. Yeah, looking forward to that. It'd be good to step away from blockbuster cinema, as we've said. We've not done many foreign films this year, actually, if at all.
No, I don't know if we have.
We did loads last year. We've barely done any this year.
Yeah, we did like Return to Seoul and like Past Lives and all that kind of stuff. It'd be really good to kind of delve back into that. I always love a trip to the watershed.
Yes, likewise.
So really looking forward to that, actually.
Nice.
Good choice.
In the meantime, thank you for getting through another episode.
Thanks. Yeah.
And we will catch you in the next one.
See you then.
Lots of love. Have a good one.
Bye.